What's up guys, it's Crested Phoenix back with another video today, and today is May 30th and I'm coming at you with a highly requested video. I've had several comments over the last month of May to do a Leopard Gecko versus Crested Gecko video. And I thought, okay, I guess I could do that. That might work. Today is the day that I'd give that to you. So in this video, I'm going to be comparing Leopard Geckos versus Crested Geckos. And essentially how I'm going to be doing that is I'm going to be breaking down their individual care. So I have Leopard Gecko care coming up first, and then Crested Gecko care after it. So this is just being done to compare the ease of care between the two species of lizard. They are both, in my opinion, great starter reptiles. I think it's just up to you whether you want a arid or a humid loving creature and all the care that goes along with it. So by the end of this video, I hope you have enough information in order to form your own opinion and decide which one you want to get yourself, whether it's a Leopard Gecko or a Crested Gecko. That is up to you. I have both, and I love them both. So I want you guys to form your own opinions. I'm going to start with Leopard Gecko care, then move on to Crested Gecko care, and then do my kind of general overall thoughts. Let's get into it. We're going to start off with Leopard Gecko side of things. Now this is just going to be basically care and a couple points about the actual lizard itself. Do Leopard Gecko first and then Crested Gecko, and we will figure out exactly which is right for you. So Leopard Geckos are nocturnal, terrestrial, and they'll get to be at most like 10 inches, typically more around 7 to 8 inches. They also have a long lifespan of about 15 to 30 years. Now Leopard Geckos are great starter pets because their size is relatively small. Their handleability is very, very good. They're easy to handle. They tame down very nicely and are just great companions. When they're babies, they can be a little skittish, but as they grow up, you will get more adapt to them and they'll be more accustomed to handling and just chill with you. So they're very relaxed. They have a very gentle demeanor about them. They are very cautious and they do not take off very often. Another upside is their plethora of morphs. They have a ton of morphs out there, so whether you like black or you like yellow or you like orange or you like different eyes or different colors, these will work out perfectly for you. There's hundreds of morphs out there. This specifically right here, as you're seeing, is a high yellow morph, so there's not as many dots as there would be on a typical one. So as you can see here, they have a nice plump tail, and this tail can be removed if stressed or pulled on. They will drop their tail. They will regrow a new one, but it'll come kind of a weird, like, bulbous shape. It will not look as perfect as these do. So Striker here hasn't lost his tail, thankfully, and he's looking very, very good. When they're removed, I'll try and insert a picture right here. Their tail looks a little bit like, I don't know, like a pear's growing on the end. So it's very bulbous and then it kind of slenders out, and there's not all the little ridges that you see in here. Now something that's nice about having such small lizards is their cage size. You do not need a huge cage for these guys. At very, very least, you could house them in a 10-gallon. In my opinion, that's a little small, so I keep him in a 15-gallon. A 20-gallon is plenty of room for these guys. Now some features in the cage. Obviously you need a water bowl that is filled with water. While they are, I guess, arid reptiles, they do drink a lot of water. I catch him drinking all the time, so it's important to have that in there for them. So right here you can see they have a hot hide. Right under there is where his heat pad is, and I used to use the heating capacity of that cave that is actually like a heat cave. I have since unplugged it, but it used to be a heat cave. You can also see behind the plant there's his cold side cage, so there's no heat on that side. It stays typically around mid-70s in there, and he can get away from the heat and cool down. So that's very important for leopard geckos. They do need to have a warm hide and a cold hide per leopard gecko. Now in a 10-gallon cage, that's all you should have is one leopard gecko. In a 20-gallon cage, you could probably keep a trio. They would need their own hiding spots, though. I don't recommend having like one hiding spot on each side for all three leopard geckos. Ideally, you'd have 2 or 3 on each side, as well as a humid hide. I do not currently keep a humid hide in there with him because A, I think they're a little bit unsightly, and B, my room stays honestly quite humid. How I remedy not having a humid hide in there is after shedding, he'll shed his whole body, and then he will have like skin stuck on his toes. So I just soak him in a warm bath and handle him and take the little like toe skin off for him. So the warm side temperatures should be at about 86 to 88 degrees. You don't want it too much hotter than that, otherwise you can cause burns and heat stress. And the ambient temperature in his cage is obviously from 86 to the cold side, where it's about mid 70s, with about a 5 or 6 degree drop at nighttime. So on Striker here, I do have a UVB lamp on. I haven't changed it in probably 3 or 4 years, so there's not really much UV in there at all. It's just more to see him during the day. UV is optional with these guys. You can keep them with UV. You can also keep them without UV. When keeping them without UV, you just want to dose with vitamin D3, calcium, 1 to 2 times a month. These guys' diets consist of pretty much exclusively insects. You can feed them a variety of diets, anywhere from crickets to superworms to mealworms, hornworms occasionally, silkworms they'll eat, just insects. They are insectivores. And as many times as you'll hear, oh, you can feed them baby food, please, for the love of God, do not feed them baby food. It is not good for them. Do not do it. Now, substrate for these guys, as you can see, I keep Striker on walnut chips. The only reason I do this is because I tongue feed him. He's not going around hunting for crickets and ingesting a ton of the sand. Obviously, yes, they are curious creatures and they do lick their surroundings. So yeah, he might ingest a little bit of sand. Honestly, in my opinion, it's nothing to worry about, but that's just me personally. I know a lot of people hate using sand. I get told all the time, oh, take him off sand, you're gonna kill him. He's 11 years old. I think he's okay with it. Alternatively, you can use AstroTurf, you can use reptile carpet, you could use paper towel, you could use newspaper. So you could honestly use any of those substrates, and that would be enough for them to strive on. So that kind of wraps up the basic care requirements for the Leopard Gecko. Striker here is about 11 years old, so he's kind of during his midlife crisis right now. He likes to eat a lot. But we'll skip from leopard geckos over to crested geckos. And alright guys, so I brought Tig out for this video. I have no idea how long she's going to stay up there, but I brought her out to show you guys exactly what a crested gecko looks like. So Tig here is a partial pinstripe harlequin crested gecko, and she is not fired up right now. And basically when people say fired up with crested geckos, it means their colors are more vibrant. Right now she was just sleeping, so she's kind of drab, but over the course of the video you'll be able to see her get more and more dark and more colorful. So again, crested geckos are nocturnal species. They are arboreal rather than terrestrial, and their body size is about 4 to 5 inches. With their tail, it's typically about 6 or 7, so they are smaller than the leopard geckos, and that might be an option. They do jump when handling, so that's something you have to keep in mind. But overall, again, just like leopard geckos, they have a ton of morphs. There's so many out there. There's some beautiful ones. They range from very expensive to quite inexpensive. They live pretty similar to leopard geckos. They'll live anywhere from 15 to 20, 25 years, something like that. Again, they're very easy to care for, like the leopard geckos. There are a couple variations on the care that you need to be giving, but we'll go into those later. So they are very easily handleable. You can just go in there and grab these guys. They're quite relaxed. Of course, every animal has its own personality. Some will tolerate being held better than others. These guys can lose their tail just like leopard geckos. However, the only difference is they cannot grow them back. They're typically called frog butts when they lose their tail, because that's kind of what it looks like. They just look like a little stumpy body, and it's very cute. It does not affect them in really any way. They could still live a long, happy life even if they lose their tail. As you can see, Tig still has her tail, so that's a good sign. As for cage size, that's where they differ quite a lot. Their cage needs to be arboreal, so instead of a 15, 20 gallon tank maximum, you want these guys in an 18 by 18 by 24 minimum cage. Now, some people keep their crested geckos in a 12 by 12 by 18, and in my opinion, that is way too small. It is just too small for their activity level, and at nighttime they like to jump and bounce around their tank, and that is not enough room for them to do so. So you guys saw her cage. I'm going to focus on her because it looks like she's about to jump. Whether she does or not, who knows? So cark bark, bamboo, and if you really want to go on the inexpensive route. You can even do like a piece of PVC tubing at an angle for them to kind of curl up in at nighttime. This Exoterra plant right next to her, she spends most of her time in, and she loves it. So I do recommend that Exoterra plant. I don't exactly remember what it's called, but you can see it. But you can see it now, and you can make your own kind of judgment as to what it is and where you can find it. Typically they sell it at local pet stores, so just go to one of them and they should carry it. If not, they should be able to get it in for you. Down there we have a piece of cork tube, as I mentioned earlier, and I know people are going to be... There you go, she did jump. I know people are going to be wondering what kind of cage I keep Tig in, and this is a Reptile Edge acrylic cage. It's 18 by 18 by 24 inches, and it is a stunner. As for temperatures in their cage, you want it mid 70s to very low 80s at very most. You can have supplemental lighting on them to make that, but at nighttime, avoid any form of lights because we don't know exactly what they can see versus what we can see. I'm sure a blue or red light can be seen by them, whether it's the UVA, UVB, or any other infrared or ultraviolet rays that is being given off by that light. Chances are one of those wavelengths they can see and can bother them and affect them in unknown ways. They should be kept with no lights at nighttime at all. So feeding for these guys is really easy. As you can see on screen here, this is another Reptile Edge product. It's called the Reptile Edge. It is a ledge for feeding and a water bowl if you choose to, and it works wonders. Now, as for feeding, these guys differ a lot from leopard geckos at feeding. You can feed them insects, and they are primarily insectivores. Repashy's Crested Gecko diet, or like I have in here, Pangea's Crested Gecko diet, are all great options for these guys. They do tend to lap it up very readily. Tig is not the biggest fan of it, so I do have to feed her some crickets, but I mean, sometimes you get a picky Crested Gecko. Going into a little bit more detail about the Crested Gecko diet, the Crested Gecko diets are complete diets. You do not technically have to feed any other like protein source besides that. Now, I would recommend maybe once a month throwing in some D3 dusted crickets into their cage so they can get some protein along with some D3. Another big difference in the care between crested geckos and leopard geckos is these guys are tropical, as you can see. They do like to have a humidity of above 50, so that will typically mean misting their cage 2 to 3 times a day. And while misting, you want to spray them directly because they do get their water this way. You can put it in a water bowl, but typically they won't go to it. They'll just lap off the water off the leaves. I'll give her a quick spray now so you can see exactly what I mean. So there you have it, and if you compare her coloration now to when we first started, she's a completely different gecko. You can see there's much more orange, she's a lot darker. This is when you'd typically be calling her like more fired up. So that's a little bit more lingo for you guys that are just getting into the Crested Gecko world. So that right there is some general care on the Crested Geckos. I hope you guys have been able to take something from it, and now we're going to get into my final thoughts. So I'm going to begin with my final thoughts. I'm basically just going to have it over some footage of the Crested Gecko and Leopard Geckos. Me personally, if you're wondering, I started with the Leopard Gecko. I got Striker 11 years ago, and he's still going very strong. Whereas Tig, I picked up maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and obviously she's still doing very well. They both make for amazing pets. That's something that you have to keep in mind. It's more of a circumstantial or relative decision. You will not be disappointed with either gecko. Both can be great for handling. Both are easy to keep. Crested Gecko does require a little bit extra daily effort with the misting and requires a little bit more maintenance on their food because their food can go moldy, but that only needs to be changed out every 2 days. Whereas leopard geckos should be fed every 2 to 3 days. So if you're wondering, okay Mike, but what makes a better pet? In my opinion, they both make great pets. It honestly comes down to how much room you have and what kind of style, whether it's like tropical or arid, or like you can see here, they don't have eyelids, whereas the leopard geckos have eyelids and can close their eyes. So the decision will really come down to how much space you have for a cage and what kind of environment you want to create. If you like tropical, of course, go with tropical. Then you would be picking a Crested Gecko because leopard geckos don't live in tropical areas. As well, if you have a little more room available, especially height-wise, you want to go with a Crested because they do need height and they will use it. She is up and around her cage all night. She prances around and hops about and is utilizing every square inch of her cage. Now, in contrast, there's leopard geckos. Leopard geckos are more arid. You can keep them in a smaller tank with less height. Ideally, you'd have about 12 inches just so you have enough space to kind of get around in there and make it nice for them. And that's pretty much the lowest, like shortest cage you can find is about 12 inches. Leopard geckos do differ in their live insect consumption. These guys do require live insects. They will not typically eat any dead or prepared diet foods. Now, Striker here actually does love Rapashi's grub pie, but that's just kind of a treat for him whenever I'm feeling like he deserves one. You can also see here that they close their eyes and they have eyelids. They're part of the family that has eyelids, where crested geckos cannot fully close their eyes. They do not have proper eyelids. So when it really boils down to it, I have given you some care for these guys. I have given you my thoughts. I personally really like leopard geckos. I mean, crested geckos are awesome. But, I mean, my heart lies with leopard geckos, so if I had to say a starter, I would say leopard geckos, but that is a very biased opinion because that's what I started with. I urge you to decide for yourself which one you like more. Whether you like the smaller tank, the more horizontally oriented tank, the arid climate, or whether you prefer the vertically oriented tank and a tropical climate. These are all decisions you need to make when considering your first reptile or your first lizard at least, and you're debating between either crested geckos or leopard geckos. Now, I will have a quick mention for gargoyle geckos and fat-tail geckos. They are essentially doppelgangers of the crested gecko, is essentially the same care as a gargoyle gecko, and the fat-tail gecko is essentially the same care as a leopard gecko. So if you're debating between those two, you can also keep that in mind. This video will still apply between those two as well. So from Tig and I to you, I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope this has kind of answered your question, or at least help you decide whether you want a leopard gecko or a crested gecko, and which one will better suit your household. If you guys enjoyed the video or if it helped you at all, drop a like down below. If you made it to the very end, leave the word fern in the comments down below, and that will let me know that you've made it to the very end. If you have any other questions, comments, concerns, anything like that, be sure to drop it in the comments. I answer pretty much every comment. If you have any questions, I will answer them in the comments down below. And subscribe to my channel for the last day of May Madness coming up tomorrow, as well as any other reptile, frog, plant videos in the near future. Have a good one, guys. Graphic Phoenix, out of here.